Biggest race of the year is 1 week away here on RCI TV. Last year, 24 hours of Kyalami. This year, we're at Spa. We wouldn't have it any other way. RCI TV never ran a 24-hour of Spa, and, well, we thought that was kind of ridiculous. We've got to be able to do that at least once, do we not? And that was a decision the drivers made this year. However, 1 week away, you know what that means. It's time for a qualifying and Super Pole session, about ready to kick off here in about 6 minutes. You're watching the 889 come around the Legions of Racers car. Pratma currently just dropping in some last-minute practice before that qualifying session will start. And they're on hopes for 6 points out of the pole position today by the time the 30-minute open session is over. But keep in mind, you got a Super Pole session as well after that. So last month it didn't go so well for our traditional pole centers. Jesse Lee, of course, has some thoughts about that he'll talk about in a minute. But first, Stewie in the box with me as well. And Jesse Lee, we have a guest with us today. Would you like to introduce him?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Super Bowl qualifying here at Spa-Francorchamps. And as you said, Mike, we do have a very special guest. I still don't know what you promised him to get him in the booth with us, but we do have a very special DJ Clark joining us today, not only for today, but for the race as well, but for the purposes of qualifying, Mr. DJ Clark.
Hey everybody, how you doing out there, guys? It is an absolute honor to be a part of Super Bowl qualifying here today. I am ready to get roaring.
And I just want to preface this before we even get started on the qualifying session. Yes, this will be the most American broadcast that anybody's ever seen on RCI TV, and that includes the entire seasons of the Friday Championship that Jesse and I have done together.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that Stewie's going to go buy a pickup truck immediately following today's qualifying session. I still don't know how he puts up with us all, but we do appreciate his sacrifice for the greater good, ? But as we tune down the final few minutes here in practice leading up to the qualifying session, let's flash you back to last month, the Laguna Seca race. Not everything went to plan for everybody. Keep in mind, for qualifying, the most dominant car in the championship, Yazheat, got into Super Pole, but did not set a lap. They started P10. It did not hinder them for very long, an hour or so into the race. They did take the lead. And in fact, at the time of the red flag, they did win that race. Points were awarded at the time of the red flag, but Yazheat won overall. Weishite finished second, and Giga Chad finished third for the pro class. And quite interestingly, Madhouse, the Canadian outfit, won in the silver class over JL Motorsport, and the Flying Hellfish, the 444, after a terrible race too, responded with a podium as well. And of course, everybody, Mike Jones and DJ, they got points based on where they were when the red flag came out, and that's where the points set today. But somebody is going to get 6 points today. We're getting pole today.
And of course, two classes out on the field as well. Pro and Silver will both be awarded separately their pole position points, and of course, position points during the race as well. And of course, fastest lap points during the race for both classes. GC Racing Car has had a pretty dang good run. The first two rounds, they also struggled a bit at Laguna after the red flag, only getting 1 point for the race, finishing P14 after winning the first round at Nürburgring in the silver class. Connection Loss Racing now holding P1 in the overall silver class points lead, though, after just very consistent finishes for the 404. They'll be hoping to capitalize on that today. Roth looks like he'll be doing their qualifying, and I think that's a great choice by him, or by the 404 team to have Roth out there. But notably, the 992, who you just talked about, Jesse, not in the server at the moment. We think that possibly they are not going to be participating in the qualifying session. It might be starting from the back. And DJ, you've done a couple 24 hours before. Last to first challenge on a 24-hour Spa?
It's certainly possible to be able to try to do it, but not exactly what I would say is recommended. Especially going down to the first couple of corners here, you can get into a couple of kerfluffles, and you really don't want to find yourself even more on the back foot, maybe a little bit of damage to the front end of that Porsche of the 992. So not really understanding the strategy out of that Yazheat team.
Well, in the end, I don't know if it's going to hurt their points too much. They are, what, 36 points to the good ahead of the T3 Motorsport Black 411. And of course, Spa being worth double points as well. That's something that, we're going to get up to 68 points for P1 at the end of the day. So if they still come in and manage, after a 24-hour race to do, a last to first challenge, plenty of points up for grabs for them. However, Jesse Lee, a little insider info on them. I believe you were talking to me about a couple days ago. They've got a plan for the race, and it's an interesting one.
Yeah, it sure is, Mike. And I was talking to some of the members of that team, and I don't know if that was public information at the time, but they have an interesting strategy for the race. And I'm not going to specifically reveal what the plan is. I don't want to be that guy. But since it was stated in public, there may be an attempted two-man team for Yazid for the championship leaders at the 24, and that is incredible. That means both drivers will be driving, well, you would argue, somewhere in the ballpark of 12 hours apiece if they split it right down the middle. Don't know if they were blowing smoke or they were absolutely serious about that. I wouldn't put it past them, and that might all fit into their strategy. Starting from the back, two-manning the race, making it a really big challenge for themselves. I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't even think that's enough to stop them, but we'll see. If they don't show up to qualifying today, starting 30th, something like that, that is going to be a big disadvantage. That's a lot of cars you got to pass and hope you don't get entangled with on your way to the front.
And it's something that, of course, Boothby and Tortellini both up for the task with that as well. Would not be surprised to see them still be able to potentially come home P1. But as you said, DJ, I think a big part of it will be keeping it clean towards the front, towards the front, hour or so of the race. Because here at Spa, it can be pretty difficult on the first couple laps. As this car's coming up now, Martin in this corner right here, which will be turn 1 after they get released, because of course the start line on ACC is after the official turn 1 of La Source. Such a dangerous spot as you come up to the Camel Straight, up Radion and Eau Rouge, and then into Lake Holmes. There's so many incidents that can happen there, and if you're in the back of the pack, you are just so such a dangerous spot of getting caught up on incidents ahead of you, and that'll be part of the biggest thing I think for the 992 at the start.
Yeah, exactly. We don't like to think about Spa necessarily narrowing down all that much. We'd like to think of it as a big flowing circuit, but especially coming up over the crest and getting into Sector 2, as you said, going over the comb, really all the way run down into Fagnes. That's a pretty tight and narrow part of the circuit, and if there is a big accident that happens in front of you, it can block the track a little bit. You can be taken out in it, and once again, just not seeing exactly why you'd necessarily want to do a back-to-front start for the 992, even though it will be one heck of a challenge.
Well, who will not be hoping to do a last first challenge, the Connection Loss Racing team, here is Yaroslav Roth. Of course, we were just talking about P1 and Silver class overall. Not the quickest lap here during the practice session, but they're on one final steamer just to get the tire pressures correct before they jump into the open session. Plenty of room out on this track here, Jesse Lee, for 30 minutes with 27 cars out on the grid, and they should be able to make plenty of space for themselves through this 30 minutes.
Yeah, of course, do bear in mind that this is for qualifying for the 24. There are several cars that are absent, the 992 being among them. They will be allowed to start this race, albeit from the back of the pack. So all the cars here are competing for Super Pole, not pole position yet, but being inside the top 10 at the end of this 30-minute session gets you in a Super Pole session. Then it's one lap that you get, that each car gets, that determines the pole position. You were talking about CLR here today. Well, they've got a little avenging to do. It wasn't the best race for them at Laguna Seca. It was going all their way, and then somebody ripped the rug out from under them. They fell over, didn't finish on the podium, but still number 1 in the standings. So they have a little bit of work to do today, and as always, we have never failed this year in the World Tour to have silver cars in Super Pole. We've had as little as 1, as many as 3, What's your over/under, DJ? How many do you think we're going to get into Super Bowl today?
Ooh, it's a tough one to say, but I'm going to put that over-under line at about 1.5, I'd say. So open up the betting markets.
He's a betting man with that prediction. That was nice. See how he put the 0.5 in there? You know why they do that, Mike? They do that so you're either on one side or the other. You can't get it right on.
I think that's what you would be called as cheating, but we'll take it. You're a guest. It's fine.
Hey, you told me to set the over/under.
Hey, I said no. DJ did exactly what I asked, and brilliantly so. I'm gonna take the over on that one, DJ. By the way.
I think I'm
so
going to
too,
take the
though.
over as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, with there being 29 cars on the track, and by the way, the 992 has joined the server. Information on them in just a moment, but 29 cars in the server, about half of them or so are silver. So that means that it's very likely that we'll see a couple extra silver cars in that Super Bowl session. At the 992, if I can point everybody's attention in the box to our comms chat, I just got a message from Malinowski before he joined into the session. The man tested positive for COVID today, possibly, and well, that is not looking good for him for their session today. He's going to try to jump into the server, see what lap he can put down. I would expect him to do an absolutely dangerously quick lap regardless, because that's usually what happens when Tortellini and Boothby, whether they're sick or not. But yeah, that is potentially going to throw a wrench in their plans for next week as well. I can't imagine him, if he is indeed getting ill, 12 hours straight, Jesse. I don't think that's going to be. I don't think that's going to be possible for him. But I've seen worse.
Well, it all depends on how he heals up. If he tested positive in a week's time, he might actually be feeling just a little bit better. It's really hard to tell with the COVID-19, isn't it, really? But it's better that it happened now in qualifying than having to run 12 hours in a week from now. Hopefully, Torts does feel a lot better by then. We'll check in on that progress. But just showing up, knowing that you're feeling ill regardless, still showing up, trying to put the effort in, gold star for me.
Well, besides for that, Simpson Riggs 504, first one out on a hot lap, just invalidated coming out of No Name. So this will not be a lap that will count for them, but is just trying to set a little bit of a benchmark for the first part of the session. 501, I believe that is following them up directly behind. They are on a valid lap at the moment. Might get a little bit of slipstream as well as they come off the back end of the track here up through turn 16, 17, 18. 17 being Blanchimont as they come into the final chicane. There's a 501, not quite a slipstream, a little too far back, but 504 going to just float through here. The Simpson Riggs team, they've been a story over the past couple of years as well. Of course, they participated in the World Tour last year, didn't do too well overall, did the Simpson Riggs team, and they came back stronger for this year and have been putting in a decent showing, I'm very happy to say. In P11 in the points, they got 0 points on the first round of Nürburgring and have since, started climbing up a little bit of points. I'm glad to see, that they've been doing better and better for themselves. As the first couple laps get set, the 501, the first one on the board, and the last one on the board as the rest of the teams put their laps down 1.6 seconds back off of Adam Dubiel in the 500 Forza Italia car of everything here. Guys, the Forza Italian car looking very strong, and that's not something we've seen so far. Maybe this Ferrari is going to be great here at Spa today, DJ.
Maybe it is, but de Havilland able to put in a time even better there in the 3:49 McLaren. So putting that McLaren up to where we would expect it to be. Another McLaren, that's Pradma coming in, carrying on from practice, doing the same thing. So maybe the McLaren taking a little bit of the fight to the Ferrari this year.
Legion's Racers cars, of course, been a very strong car through the World Tour as well. Legion's Racers P4 in the points, and that was after a missed session at Laguna last month. They did not participate in the 8-hour. The Asian team out here just trying to gather those points back that they had to miss last month. A 17.352 for the moment. Definitely not the fastest lap I think we'll see this session, Jesse, but it is dang quick for the first little bit here. Here's Malinowski on his first hot lap. What's he looking like?
Looks pretty good. A lot of busy hands, though, in the car. Looks very nervous. That's complete opposite to what we've come to see from the Oz Heat 992. Malinowski behind the wheel or Boothby, it didn't really matter. The car seemed very planted. It seems a little skittish right now. A lot of input. I know that Malinowski is working with a direct drive wheel these days, and that I don't think that was the case when this season started. I think it's new to him, but you can see it. A lot of correction going into the corner. And we've seen that, though, in some of the sprint races from Boothby and Malinowski in Porsches, where it's set up sort of like this, where there's a lot of correction, a lot of small sort of I'm actually not sure at this point. The way that wheel is dancing, it almost looks controller-esque, dare I say it.
I think that'd be very brave of him to be using a controller. I wouldn't put it past Malinowski to potentially try it if he wasn't feeling 100%, but also at the same time, I don't think so. I think that's still definitely a wheel. I mean, of course, there are drivers who use controllers that are very, very quick. I don't know that I've ever seen Malinowski use one to practice on one, but he is going to come up and finish his first lap, so how's this going to be is going to be the question. Coming out of the final chicane and across the line, Malinowski is going to put it, P6. Sorry, I lost him on my timing screen there for a second. P6, the 17.6. Not as quick as, of course, we would expect from them normally, but he is going to abandon back to the pit lane. Perhaps need to change his tire pressures. Of course, he didn't have time to get out and practice, and that's very important for setting your tire pressures and stuff, DJ, is to make sure that you have all that ready to go by the time the session actually starts. And they didn't get a chance.
Yeah, exactly. And so they're going to have to be doing a little bit of tweaking on the fly here to really make sure they dial in that session. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them doing single laps over the course of it. Also wouldn't be surprised if that time continues to creep its way down over the course of the session as they dial everything into that 9.292.
Someone else we've been monitoring, of course, will be the P3 overall in the championship, car 18, the Blame Mike Jones Bentley of Joe McCauley and Martin Grady, and I believe that William Hendrickson will be joining them for the 24-hour. I don't know if they have a fourth driver or not for the 24-hour, as the entry of this isn't quite finalized yet, of course. But they are in P8. They just got beat by Malinowski as well, so Joe McCauley is not doing too well overall in the qualifying session at the moment comparatively to where we would expect him to be. And there is still the 501 Ferrari up at the top of the leaderboard at the moment. So the other Forza Italia team, you know, is oh no, sorry, I'm used to the 501 being the Forza Italia team. 501 is actually the Fusion DMH team, if I'm not mistaken, for this round. So that would be the Audi R8 Evo, not the Ferrari 488. And Adam Dubiel, though, P2 in his Ferrari, as Caracas is going to come across the line here momentarily for Volante and set their first lap. 70 car's been pretty strong in qualifying overall, Jesse, in the past 3 rounds.
Sure has. Volante is going to try to continue to ride that momentum here, but unfortunately that lap will not go on the board. A invalidation for the Volante number 70. They will have to try it again. Yeah, that's unfortunate. That was a 17-1. That would have been good enough for pole had it counted, but it doesn't, so it isn't. Valentin Berrier, the Giga Chad team, the 972, already inside the top 15. Needs at least 5 more spots, probably needs a few more than that to be comfortable to get into Super Pole. This is a team, Giga Chad, that you expect now to qualify in Super Pole. Needs some spots here, needs at least 3 or so tens. Will they get it here? Coming to the line, and it is indeed good enough. 6th place overall, a 17.517.
That's
edging closer and closer to the top there, DJ.
Yeah, edging closer and closer to the top, and I think you're going to start to see those times start to tumble down a little bit. Good disparity among the different makes and models that we're seeing up at the top. I'm only seeing 1 repeat in the top 7, and that being 2 BMWs, a Fisher and Twins and a Hacker. And so definitely looking like this is just about anybody's game here to be able to get themselves into Super Pole.
Marco Ripper for the GC Racing team, 514. Of course, talked about them a couple times during the practice session, the fantastic win at Nürburgring, and then have since fallen down to P4 in the championship. Ripper currently in P19 in the qualifying session. He's about a tenth and a half up, and a tenth and a half will get him about 4 or 5 positions. It would not put him in the top 10 quite yet into that Super Pole session, and up fighting with his rivals. So far, the over-under definitely seems to be going more towards that over, with 5 cars in silver up in the top 10. 18 and a half minutes to go, though. Here's Ripper across the line, only gains 2 positions, a 17.985 from the look of it. Malinowski falling further and further down as the times get quicker and quicker. However, as Stewie's just pointing out in our columns as well, he's now 3.5 to 4 tenths up as he continues out onto the back part of the track, coming out of turn 16 and out into Blanchimont will he. However, Caracas, he finally set that lap. There it is, first one on the board for the Volante Racing team, and it's a 16.9, guys.
Ooh.
Absolutely dominates the session here so far, almost 2.5 tenths up, and he is handedly in pole position. That is the gauntlet thrown down.
Absolutely took the words out of my mouth, Mike. Caracas, a 16.9. We know Malinowski was up several tenths. How far up will he get? P2, 17.190. 2 tenths off of the pole position. But for a man that is feeling very much under the weather, that is a very nice time. Coming in late to the session and now has 17 minutes left to play and maybe challenge for the lead, DJ.
May indeed. Those times certainly starting to fall, and look at that in the top 3, only separated by 2.3 or 0.23 seconds there. Very, very close running all the way at the top. We watch the pace hub. We watch the pace hub car here coming down into that final bus stop chicane. Is that Aston Martin going to have anything for us?
Looks like he's about 4 tenths up at the moment, so he very well might. P17 as he crosses the line up into P12. Lost a little bit of time there coming out of the chicane, unfortunately. Had the pace in that pace-up machine to get up into the top 10. But, hey, he's got 16 and a half minutes to do it. And, you know, the Lightning McQueen liveried pace hub car here, well, he's going to have to find some of that turbo and get himself back out onto another hot lap. Hopefully take that chicane a little better, pick up a couple more tenths. Here's the Riser Esports official team. We haven't seen them yet in the qualifying session. 1.3 back as they cross the line, up to just over a second. So picking up time here in the silver class as well. And speaking of the silver class, the RSR Blue team, who of course hasn't done too well this championship, unfortunately. They are dead last after multiple sign-outs needing to be had early on. The RSR teams did pretty well last year in the World Tour, but so far have just not been able to get as much done here this year. But back on board with Pratma, who I think Stewie's given us a hint here that he's up on his lap again, Jesse Lee, and this 889 Legions of Racers do not like to see Malinowski and Caracas out ahead of them.
They sure do not. Coming to Bruxelles now. Looks like a decent enough lap at this point. Keeping it very tidy through there. You don't want to run off too far. And in fact, doesn't at all. This corner used to be called No Name, now called Speakers. Through there, clean as well. Down into what's now called the double gouge, by the way, the double left, if you like. Used to be called Puan, of course. You don't want to run too wide, but you don't want to get too much of the inside curve here. Nicely done. It looks very controlled from the Legion of Racers. 889. Lefang's now in through what I refer to usually as the S's, but isn't so much. Lefang's and now Campus. And a little bit wide, but not too bad. Didn't get to the gravel. Didn't slow themselves down through Campus. And, of course, Stavolo. And it's pretty good using all of the runoff room. And now on to the back straight and up to Blochemont for the final couple of turns, DJ.
Yeah, and this is where it is absolutely flat out in these GT3 machines. Brings it out nice and wide. Good amount of the curving there. Takes it in. No real bobble. Now it's down into the deceptively tricky braking zone here for the bus stop. Obviously not a bus stop anymore. Good apex there. Nice clip of that. Carry the speed out to the outside. Little bit of overcorrection. This could be a good lap.
And it is P2 for the Legions of Racers car, taking over that front row from Malinowski at 17-1-3-2. Still not good enough for P1. Volante is just dominating that so far, the only one in the 16s. Pratma's got a little bit left in him, though, if I'm not surprised. You know, I would not be surprised to see him get a little bit of time through Sector 1, where I think he was losing it at. And indeed, looking at the timing screen, he is ever so slightly up as he continues on. Conechalance Racing 404. Roth, talking about him and how quick he was going to be here today at Spa, keeping himself solidified into the Super Pole session by moving up from P9 to P6 for the 404. And he's not done yet either. Of course, 13 minutes left on the session. And this is what I like about these sessions that we do here is, guys, is you know, we'll have these 30-minute sessions, and that's a very long time in the sim to set qualifying. You know, obviously 30-minute sessions, you know, out in the real world isn't that much time, being realistic, because you can't stop, reset to pit. You know, it takes time to go in, and if you want new tires or you need to splash of fuel back in, you got to drive around the track, come into the pit lane, drive down, do your service, and then go back out. These 30-minute sessions here, it is just a scrap the entire time, because you just continue to keep improving and improving and improving, and that's what we're seeing, of course, throughout the session.
Yeah, no, it really is. You're absolutely right. That is the case. And one other side effect of that, DJ, and I'm sure you can speak on this a little bit as well, is you get a nice 30-minute session like we're doing here. Everything gets nice and close. We've got about 21, 22 some cars all around 1 second, and it's not going to get any further apart. They're just going to keep improving. We're just going to keep compounding, and that means a 10th is going to make a difference, and not just for a position. It could be for several.
It very well could be. And the other thing that is going to be very, very helpful for these guys in this 30-minute session is car positioning out on track, trying to find that optimal window to just get a hint of the draft as you're coming up over Eau Rouge and Radion and onto the Kemmel Straight, when you're coming down through Blanchimont and not having to check yourself up a little bit. So you've got plenty of times to be able to get out there and just find that perfect area for the car. So plenty of time to do that, and that's one of the things that makes it interesting as well.
Martin Schumacher, T3 Motorsports Black, of course, P2 in the championship. This guy is looking very, very quick here throughout this lap. I'm almost wondering if this is a bit of a bug on our timing screen. I'm seeing him 1.4 seconds up at the moment, guys, and a valid lap as he's making his way through Blanchimont. I don't think this is right, but if it is, it's going to be a low 16. I'm pretty sure that it's a little bit of a bug on our timing screen. We've had this before. Of course, ACC's broadcast tool doesn't necessarily work 100% of the time, and yeah, it's now up to 2 seconds. So I'm going to assume this is a bit of a bug. Let's see. He's going to put in a 17.9 on that lap. So still a pretty reasonably quick lap, but does not improve him at all. But this is P2 in our championship right here, T3 Motorsport. Schumacher, of course, coming around for the qualifying session for them. I think Schumacher, if I'm not mistaken, Jesse, you'll have to correct me, but I believe he's done every qualifying session for them so far, has he not?
That's tough to say since we're spread out by a month of race, but I'm almost confident that that is the way that it has been. Martin Schumacher has been the qualifier of that car. I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think they might have swapped drivers in the opening round for a moment, then put Martin back in that car. But I don't know if that was that team or
you're right,
or another
they
team.
They did.
But
Because
either way,
they put in what's his name, Schaefer in for the Nürburgring for about 10 minutes.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Folks, you do so many races here in eSport, and you tend to forget some of them, especially some of the qualifying bits. But wow, I had to go back in the old memory bank for that. But nevertheless, Martin Schumacher has been putting in the heavy hitting for them in qualifying for the majority of the season. You saw Gratis Caracas there for a brief moment, the number 70 Volante car. Question is, can anyone in this field best a 16.98, or could Caracas themselves go ahead and widen that margin? It's 1.5 tenths to Pratama in second place in the 889. Malinowski in third, a little over 2 tenths behind, and it gets very close all the way through. And Valentin Berrier is going to go to the barrier and a hard hit, and that is always a risky run in the Porsche.
Yeah, it just looks like a bit of a snap oversteer that we tend to see out of the Porsche. And that's unfortunate for him. I mean, he's usually in perfect control of that car, is Berrier, and unfortunate for him. But he's still in P10. Not too much between him and McCauley, back behind, of course. But they've got enough time to come out and set another lap. Joe McCauley is currently floating about a half a tenth to a tenth up on his lap. Schumacher, though, looks like he might take over that P10 slot from Berrier. He's going to come across the line. P12 comes across the line, and he will not actually improve. Lost it coming out of the chicane, but at this point, DJ, he's got a couple tenths in him. He's 2 positions back from the Super Pole session. At this point, only 8 minutes, which is only 4 laps here at Spa. That's a lot of time in theory, but not when you're this close and trying to put so far on the edge of your limits. He's getting desperate, maybe.
Yeah, and we could see that desperation force a couple of mistakes, maybe force a little bit of an off-track running as we jump back here to that Yas Heat team, the 992. Again, very fidgety with that wheel. And what that's going to do is that is just going to slow down microseconds as the car kind of slides and scrambles across the track. I'm really amazed that they are able to keep up this close of a time up into the top 5 like they are with all of that wheel movement. Normally around here at Spa, smoothness is key.
Jesse was saying this is what we expect out of Malinowski a lot of the times in these sprint races, but we don't see it too much in the endurance races. He's usually got a very planted steering wheel look, but out here in the qualifying session, maybe it's because he's just not feeling 100%. Maybe it's because he's just running a very loose setup. But look at that correction there. Can we see that from the outside, Stewie, as he's coming across campus and Stavlo there? Let's see that from the outside. How far away?
I'm pretty sure he got the turn in wrong or something, or hit the curb, but that was a lot of seesaw.
It didn't look like anything
right
from the
there.
outside.
Yeah, it looked perfectly fine. Cue the opera music and the pinky up tea sipping. But from in car, it tells a very completely different story of Malinowski's lap. And our broadcaster Stewie saying that to them looks like a direct drive wheel with the torque turned way up, and it might do. As Malinowski does go P2, a 17.052, gets ever so close, 3/4 of a tenth off of the pole position, and that's very well done, but still just the one car in the 16s.
Again, floating up on his lap ever so slightly. He's about halfway across the track at the moment, about 1:05 into his lap, and he's just flirting with that half a tenth to a tenth up, which is really about what he needs. So that 89 Legion of Racers car could potentially improve, continue to improve a bit. But the top 3, I mean, they might be pretty locked in at this point. I don't know if people can go out and run these. And run these low 17s anymore, at least in the pro class. Of course, you also have Roth, currently P1 of the silver, and it's something that they're probably pretty happy about in that 404 car as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're going to be feeling pretty good about being able to set that time down there the way they are. So watch Malinowski there bringing that car down. No name, got to be a little bit careful. Easy to run a little bit wide there. That is that replay of it as he comes back down now and pilots that car through a double gauche. Is that what we're calling it? I'm old school. It's Poohal.
I absolutely take it. The double left, Puon. Of course, a lot of people still refer to No Name as No Name, of course, being Speaker's Corner, but I don't blame anyone in the slightest. DJ, you brought up a relic from the past that jogged my memory earlier. You called the chicane the bus stop. Of course, years and years ago, kids gather around at story time with Jesse. That actually used to be a bus stop chicane. It isn't anymore, but we still call it that. I've called it that for years. For me, it will always be the bus stop.
Yeah, it's going to take me a minute to not call speakers No Name and double gauche, I guess is what Puon is called now. I had completely forgotten they changed the corner names. It's something that I heard about a while ago, but it's been a little while since I've been to Spa, actually. So not something I've gotten myself quite used to yet. The Pace Hub car coming around the not bus stop chicane. He's going to try and set a slightly quicker lap and does. P14 to P12. Still outside that top 10 for the Super Pole, but getting closer and closer. He's going to go ahead and reset to pit, maybe try to get just a touch more fuel in it. He's got about one lap to do at this point. It is a Super Pole sprint for the finish for any car that goes down into the pit lane at this point and tries to do one more. By the time you get out and get onto your hot laps, all the time you're going to have. Sensible Racing Machine back in P23, not doing too well in their BMW M4, but still, even though they're not doing too well, only a second back from the leader, guys. I mean, that's 23 positions all the way back down to a second. I wouldn't be too upset about that if I was in the silver class here, being a second off of these guys. Looks like he's going to invalidate that one, though. One more chance. Oh, yeah, never mind. He's going to pit.
It's just getting so close. It's getting closer all of the time. We talked a little bit about that briefly, about how the longer the session goes on, the more cars are going to be within a second. It was about 22 earlier. We've got just about 24 now, and it's only getting tighter. Are we going to talk about the Jardier community team out here? They are threatening to fire Mike Williams if he doesn't get inside the top 15. And of course, he's 21st right now. I'd be sweating in the cockpit of that car if I knew that.
Yeah, Clark's been in the chat talking about how he had to get to the top 15, and it's just not doing him well at the moment. And by the way, the T3 Black team did point out that we missed Schaefer actually do the first half of the qualifying, Jesse Lee, if you didn't catch that. So Schaefer was indeed in the car for T3 Motorsport Black, which of course we're watching T3 Motorsport White, their silver class team, come across the track at the moment. So Schumacher indeed did not do the full session with them, and Schaefer was out at the start. They are not going to make it into the top 10, I don't think, as Schumacher currently not up on his lap. He'll have one more chance though. He's about to cross the line. Final seconds here, DJ. I mean, what do you do if you're P11 to P13 at this point? Do you just get desperate and just go all out even if you wreck it, or do you go okay and resign yourself?
I think you absolutely go for everything that you have. You push as much as you can to try to break in there, even if you're starting P10 in before we get into the Super Bowl category. It is just a matter of getting into there. You put everything you've got down.
Less than 90 seconds left. Here's Adam Dubio for the Force Italia team, going to come across the line. He is up just a touch, losing it out of the chicane. Might pick him up a position, and it won't. He was, in fact, 0.02 of a second slow. He was up coming into the final corner. Did not, as we've seen quite a few times today, losing it in that last in that last chicane. Turn 19, turn 20, not doing too well for people here in the qualifying session today, whether they're missing their braking point and overshooting, or whether they're just not clipping that apex and getting on the throttle perfectly, one or the other. It's really losing people. I'm Schumacher, Jesse Lee. Well, he's up. He's got a car in front of him. This could hurt or help. No, he's going to get out of the way. The Bentley pulling over so Schumacher can continue his lap. 1.5 tenths, almost 2 tenths up as he's coming through the middle part of the S's here. This could, if he can keep this up, just lost a little bit there, but he could slide himself into that top 10. He is going for it. It's going to be very, very close.
Well, DJ nailed it. DJ talked about being on the ragged edge and absolutely going for it here at the end, fighting against the dying of the light, and that's exactly what everyone is trying to do. Just to touch on your point a little bit, Mike, about losing it in the chicane just a little bit after being up. I feel like that's a very common thing for racing drivers to do. It's anticipation. Seeing a negative green number on your HUD and then pushing a little bit too hard, losing a little bit of focus, it certainly does happen. De Havilland with an improvement there. P5. Martin Schumacher across the line. Will it be an improvement? It was an improvement, but it was not enough to get them into Super Bowl. He needed a little less than half of a tenth. It was just that close.
That's got to be heartbreaking. Half a tenth off the Super Bowl session, DJ. I mean, you're kicking yourself at that point.
Yeah, exactly. That is the kind of the heartbreak that you just go, "Oh, are you kidding me?" It is just that close. The good news is, I mean, they will be starting off 11th in the race. Let's see here if Volan's able to improve his time up any at all. He's about 9 tenths off. Looks like he's going to cross over the line. He'll stay in 19th, but yeah, just missing out by that much there for Schumacher. He is going to be kicking himself all the way back down to pit lane.
Looks like one of the couple cars that is still out on a hot lap. Of course, this is one of them here. A. Cole for the Sensible Racing 83. He is about a tenth up on his lap. Joe McCauley up in P13. The Bentley is about a tenth up on his lap as well. And you know, if he can gain that time, it will put him up into the Super Pole session. Joe, of course, has been kind of flirting with that 10 to 15 area through most of this session, and just hasn't been able to get it done quite yet. He is directly behind the Sensible Racing BMW here. You're going to see him come into shot just briefly as the camera pans over. So both these cars should be crossing line shortly after another. The 83 has lost any time that they were up as he's coming into the chicane now. So can he do the opposite? He was seeing red. Will he see green coming out of the chicane? He's seeing green coming into the chicane, but it looks like it'll stay steady, and this is going to be about the same lap that he ran. Here's Joe McCauley again, and it looks like that he will not gain any time. McCauley going to solidify P13 as he crosses a line, and that is it, ladies and gentlemen. You can see Joe, he is frustrated with himself. He had the time, throws himself into the wall before he jumps back to pit lane at the end of the session. A frustrating experience for Joe McCauley, especially after his SRO Europe race this past week. I remember he did not have a great time in the qualifying session, and he might still be a little frustrated about that. I wouldn't be surprised. But here are the standings. That Volante team, Jesse, only ones in the 16s by the end of the session. A fantastic lap by Caracas.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And if you pay attention to the lap time, they didn't hold a single purple sector in any particular sector. They were just fast all the way around that 16.980. I didn't think that was the only 16 we were going to see, but alas, it was. Malinowski for Yazid
Look
did
at,
come
I just
in
want to
second.
point one thing out, Jesse. 2.5 tenths up in Sector 2 is
Yeah,
the 992.
yeah.
Insane.
You might say Sector 2 is a Porsche sector. You might say that. I might argue exactly that point. But if you look at the purple sectors, obviously Yaz Heat had the fastest middle sector, and I would say by a decent margin, surely. And the 404, the connection loss drivers, they had the fastest third. And you have to go all the way down to Nicholas Bosselet in 17th place, the 747 Bentley, to find the fastest sector number one. Excuse me, that's nearing, not Bosselet, 18th place in that case in the 747. I do apologize, but incredible spread, a lot of really quick sectors, and I think that shows the strengths of some of the cars and some of the drivers as well.
And I'm very happy to see, you know, all these silver class cars up in here. I mean, you know, we have 5 silver class cars, right? I definitely beat the record. These McLarens apparently were going to be the winners of the session today on the overall perspective. So DJ, the over was definitely right, but we were. I don't think even any of us were thinking 5 silver class cars, but great job by all of these drivers today.
Yeah, fantastic job. And I've got to agree with you there. That McLaren looking particularly strong. Also, a good smattering of BMWs. That doesn't surprise me. The BMW tends to be pretty quick in a straight line. I am a little bit surprised to see that Nissan up there. I would not have expected that GTR Nismo GT3 to be able to be one of those cars that's really going to be able to get up and up in there. But putting a good lap in there is that Orion race team.
Well, of course, the championship points after Laguna Seca last month, Yaz Heat has 95 points, well and truly beyond everyone else. T3 Motorsport Black, 59 points in second place. The hashtag Blame Mike Jones team, my personal favorite team. I don't know why. 52.5 points. Keep in mind, Laguna was red flagged a month ago and had half points. So you're going to see some half points here. Legion Racers in fourth place with 42. Orion Race Team with 35.5. Alante with 32.5. NSN with 27.5. Tied with Giga Chad in seventh place. We Shite with 23.5. And Pace Hub is your top 10 in pro with 21 points. course, the back half of the pro grid, the Jardier community team in the 40 with 20.5. The Butterfly Effect Esports team, 15.5. Grid Finder on 13.5. Team Ballas Ukraine with 2 points. And Bannon Racing on one single point. All the teams that have 0 points are still active in the championship, but haven't finished high enough to score any points. Any particular team with a dash means that they have retired from the championship. And of course, there are two different races going on at the same time. Despite finishing off the podium at Laguna, Connection Lost Racing still maintains the championship lead in silver, 67.5 points over Madhouse Racing with 61. A little bit of a gap back to third place. Sensible Racing with a sensible 47.5 points. GC Racing in fourth place with 46. And rounding out the top five, Flying Hellfish with 39.5. They're tied with the front left tire scrubber esports team for that fifth place position. Right behind them, Forza Italia racing team with 34.5. T3 Motorsport White in the 80 with 25.5 points. Gale Motorsport Esports in ninth place with 24.5. Turn 1 SSR rounds out your top 10 with 21.
Looking back a little further in the field there, as we wait for that to tick over in 11th, it is Sim NS Riggs SNR Racing there, holding on with 19.5 points, a point and a half ahead of XBD Emerald Racing. Ada Pro Esports behind them, turn 102 in 14th. Fusion DMH Racing holding on to 15th position. This is where those numbers get very, very tight. Drivers a little bit farther down in the field. Ledge Racing, VRM Racing, Green Lavas Engineering as the last team there to have points on the board. Revolution Sim Racing Blue holding on to a 0, and FFF Racing Big Beavers, as you said, with that dash, meaning that they have retired from the championship.
Well, that's how we've got to this point, DJ. And your take from qualifying.
I think we're going to have a very, very fascinating Super Bowl. I think what's going to be really interesting here is that this may be a little, let's say, non indicative of actual race pace. Because remember, for a lot of this, it is going to be driving solo. This is going to be solo qualifying here for this Super Bowl. You're not going to have the benefit of the draft. And so some teams may be able to tweak the cars just a little bit better to try to get a little bit more speed coming out if they are in the draft, being able to save a little bit of fuel. You obviously want to be starting on pole for a 24-hour race, but it is not going to be as crucial. So if there's a couple of surprises in drivers farther down the order, don't let that shock you too much.
Well, also, these 10 teams, I should say, have already done the heavy lifting for the day, really. They've qualified at worst 10th place here today, which puts them in the top third of the field, which means they're going to have a decent enough starting spot regardless. So anything past that is just gravy, really. And also, like you said, 24-hour race, anything can happen, and we all know it will happen. But there is bragging rights for qualifying on pole. And also, by the way, there's 6 points on the line as well. Some teams could do with 6 points for sure. DJ, before we start getting going here, releasing the cars, of course, we will be going one at a time. It will be one lap, make or break. Do we think Yaz Heat has a chance to put it on pole here today?
I mean, discounting Yas Heat is a little bit like discounting your favorite team out of the championship going into a year. They have a chance at doing it. I obviously think with the COVID-related illness that they're under right now with Malinowski, it could put them back a little bit. But that team is always strong. They should be up there. I think I would be surprised if I didn't see them in the top 5. Let's put it that way.
I
Well,
think unless they, I think unless the Laguna gets pulled, Jesse, I tend to agree with DJ here. I think they will likely be fighting for the P1 still, regardless of anything, unless he invalidates. I mean, we saw how struggling he was during that open session with the car. And even though Malinowski is very good at controlling even a struggling Porsche, it is still a struggling Porsche, as we saw Berrier come off in double gauche.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike Jones. In that case, can the number 70 Volante team, they were fast in the practice leading up to the group qualifying, can they do it a third time and be the fastest car here today? They're the only car in the 16s, but they have to do it a third time. Can Volante get the job done for pole?
That is actually who I think I'm going to put my money on for this session. I think the 70 is looking very quick here. I think the McLaren 720 in particular is, of course, very quick here. There's no Ferraris in the pro class to potentially rival them. We saw the Ferraris do very well. Of course, the Forza Italia team, number 500 from the silver, did make it up in a Super Pole session. But I think we're going to see 70 on the top step of the qualifying podium. I think that's where they will be, as Berrier is coming up to start his hot lap, nice and slow through the chicane here. DJ, would you like to give us a tour of Spa, courtesy of Mr. Valentine Berrier?
I would love to. All right, you coming across the start-finish line right there and working your way down now into the heavy braking zone that is La Source. You got to be careful there to carry a lot more speed than you think you want to, as there is plenty of room to run wide there on the exit. Now get that car all the way down over to the right wall there, almost clipping it before you fly up the granddaddy himself, over Eau Rouge, over Radion, flat out there, taking as much curve as you can, and now you get a chance to breathe a little bit. This is the long Kemmel Straight. As you come here, you want to position the car on the left side of the track, wait for it, and then get down onto the heavy braking zones. That is for Lacombe. Keep a nice eye on those curbs as they come around there, bringing it back down into Malmedy, and then taking a good chunk of curb before you come down into Brussels. This is a tricky corner. You've got to be very late on the throttle here, especially in this twitchy Porsche. Bring it out and don't go all out the curbs, as you have to set yourself up for Speaker's corner there. At Speaker's, careful not to run too wide. That AstroTurf, that barrier, it's just ready to grab you. Take a little bit of a break here before you get ready to go down into double gauche. Ooh, little bit of oversteer there coming down into the corner right now for Berrier, but he is going to be able to hold on to it as he now goes down into Fagnes. Now, this is going to be a right-left chicane. You want to come down in about third gear, as they know. As it comes around, there it is. Get a little bit out to the outside, but there is Kitty Litter waiting for you. Now we get ready for Campos. Come down into second gear. You can take that corner a little bit faster sometimes, but what he's doing here is he's really setting himself up for the exit of Stabilo there. And now it's your second time to breathe. You're able to get everything together. Maybe check a couple of settings on your dial. See what you've got. Line everything up. Then bring the car all the way over to the right. Take a little bit of that Astro and bring it down through Blanchimont. Absolutely flat out in these GT3s. Now get the car over back to the left. Get heavy onto the brakes. Down into first gear for the chicane. Big chunks of curb there. Get the throttle down and let the car run out a little bit wide. And that is a pretty good lap for Berrier there of Spa-Francorchamps.
17.465 on the board. First lap, not a bad little lap to start with, especially considering we were only seeing about a half-second better across the open qualifying session. And actually, I think we ought to invite DJ back after that.
Yeah, that was an absolute mouthful, DJ, but it sounded so good. Could you take me on a tour of every racetrack we go to? That would be just lovely. That sounded fantastic. Felix Hacker in the 818, the Madhouse racing car up next. Mike Jones, take us away.
Yeah, so the first silver class car, 818, as Jesse said, the Madhouse Racing, our BMW, two of these on the grid, only one in silver. The other one, of course, going to be in the pro class as he breaks to the source and gets early on the power. The difference between the Porsche and the BMW here is that this BMW doesn't sound like it when you're getting onto the throttle as heavy as that Porsche does. Of course, the Porsche very whiny, very noisy. This BMW sounds very calm pretty much all the way around. The thing is, all that curb, that is not an invalidation up at the top of the hill of Radion, by the way. You can cut that curb pretty much all of the way, and he's looking for the curb to come up on the left there. There it is, just on the brakes ever so slightly after. Of course, the BMW M4 GT3, fantastic brakes on this car. One of the best of the front engine cars, if not the best brakes of the front engine cars, period. And looking pretty strong as he's coming out into Ruxell's turn 10 and then out onto the little tiny straight that you got to get over to the left and immediately dip back over to the right before you come in through Speaker's Corner. Releasing the throttle there, running wide, like DJ said, avoiding that AstroTurf out there, or it will just nab you and throw you into the wall. Of course, this is where we saw Valentin Berrier crash himself in the open session just a moment ago as he comes through double gauche. But very clean and tidy, hitting the apexes on both sides of the corner is this 818, and then in through the twisty bits into the middle of the track here. Turn 13, turn 14, and then, of course, out onto Stavlo before he comes out onto the back straight here very shortly. You can run all of this curve before you turn into that corner as well. Get very, very wide on the in and out of Stavlo and then out onto the back straight. As DJ says, this is where you go, okay, I need to bring my brake bias down a couple clicks, maybe track down the ABS a dab, just for when you come into the chicane so you can get as much braking power as possible. You can really brake in a straight line here, which means you can run a slightly lower brake bias if you so want to. Just before the curb there, as you come into the chicane, gonna slam on the brakes. Nice little right left there. Looks like he clipped that apex nice and tidy coming out of turn 20. And he's going to come across the line. Nice and slow as that BMW. It always looks nice and slow. And unfortunately for Hacker, this time it didn't just look nice and slow. It was a little slow as well. A high 17, which again, isn't too bad, all things said and done. Because here's the thing, I think, Jesse Lee, is, you know, you have such a long... Or you know, only one lap rather to warm up your tires. We shouldn't be seeing the same session and the same times as we were in that 30-minute session because you just don't have enough time to get your tires up.
You sure don't. It's a case of do what you can with what you have. Well, Garrett Fisher for the Butterfly Effect Esports team has one lap to go for pole. They know the mark to beat now is a mid-17, a 17.4 to be precise. Can the 200 beat that time? Coming up, Eau Rouge and Radion for the first time, the only time. Nice and tidy, hits the inside curb, goes over the curb of Radion and now onto the Kimmel straight. Looking really nice and composed, I'll have to admit. Nothing that stands out to me in my mind that doesn't say that they've had any sort of issues with the car. It looks pretty perfect. Now into Lacombe, hitting the outside curb and now making sure don't go wide in Lacombe is super important because you have to get set up for the right-hander. Excellently done by Fisher on this occasion. Ruxell's now really wide, diamonding the corner. That was absolutely on purpose to get a better run through here and also get more speed before you get to Speakers. Ran out onto the turf and expertly gained and reined back in. And here we go. A little bit sideways there, throwing it in to the double gauche, and that was very nicely held as I felt like a little bit of extra speed was carried through that particular section now on the way to Campus now. And yeah, I noticed the BMW prior to this hit that curb exceptionally hard. Not the case here, stayed completely away from it. Get as good as runoff from Stavolo as you possibly can, and that is what Fisher has done. You don't want to go too far, otherwise you invalidate. Time to breathe. A gentle left-hander here, and the task at hand. Get through Blanchimont and get through the chicane as cleanly as possible. Job one done. No extra runoff needed. Nice and composed. Hard on the brakes here as late as you possibly dare. Down through the gears. Don't hit the sausage curb. Get the car. Oh my goodness. He's coming into the pit lane. He's invalidated his lap. I have no idea where he might have done that, but unfortunately, Fisher has invalidated their lap.
And that's going to be a real heartbreak.
Yeah, the first invalidation of the session. It doesn't feel good to do that, right, DJ? Especially being the third car out. But the Forza Italia team, well, they've got it now. And the Ferrari, DJ, very quick in the open session.
Yeah, very, very quick in the open session, and we saw there Dubiel weaving his tires a little bit, coming down out of Blanchimont, making sure they were in that peak temperature range, and there he is going to start already all over to the left side of the circuit, almost clipping into the grass there as he goes down into La Source. Looks like a pretty good line there, able to get the power up nice and easy. Taking a bit of breath here as he goes. That Ferrari that does make such a sound as it gets going. Let's see how he is able to handle Eau Rouge and Radion. Big clip there coming up and over. Perfect amount. That's just about the amount of bounce you want to see in that suspension. The 500 machine now coming through here. Very important. You see a little bit of wiggling on that steering wheel. Don't want to have a whole lot of that, but he's going to break down now. And corner. Looks like he's got Lacombe nice and easy. Little bit of a narrower line coming off of that. Whoa, little bit of a bobble there coming off of Malmedy as well. So this doesn't look like the perfect lap, but it still has plenty of time to be able to gain. Again, like we saw earlier, diamonding off Brissell's there, nice and easy. Good run through Speaker's corner. That looks okay. Able to catch it a little bit. It's not a full momentum carry, but it still looks pretty good as they go around. Now coming down through Double Gauche. Is he going to be able to keep that? Oh, that is pixel perfect. That is how you take that corner. As now he lines himself down into Fagnes. Watching to see good amount of the curb on the first part of this chicane. Good amount of curb onto the second. Able to bring the car out. I think that's going to be within track limits there still. Now he comes down into Compass, waiting. Just getting the car a little bit straighter than you'd normally see before he went down into Stavelon, and it looks like it's going to be invalidated already.
Nope, I lied to you. I told DJ it was invalid, and I lied to you, DJ. I'm sorry, continue.
This is why you never trust Mike Jones, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
This right here.
I've said that for years.
Exactly. But Adam Dubiel, not an invalidated lap. Let's see what he's got. Comes down through that final chicane, brings it out around track, and he's going to cross over the start-finish line here. He'll find himself in third place, about 0.5 of a second off.
Not a bad lap, I think, all said and done. It did not look tidy. He misshifted coming out of La Source. He got a wiggle coming out of the cones. That was a very quick lap despite all that, Jesse. I want to say for that 500 Forza Italia team, a great little lap from them, even despite the issues. But the Fusion Espana team, our only Audi here, the 501. What do you think the Audi can do, Jess?
I think it's going to be a little bit quicker than what we've seen. It might be a threat to the pole position here. We're going to have to find out. The Fusion Espana team, Robin behind the wheel, and of course trying to topple a 17-4, and that's what they're trying to do here. Of course, we just saw the Ferrari. That car looked very uneasy. Pay very close attention to Robin's hands as we go through Eau Rouge and Radion here. Not nearly the seesawing that we saw, but excellently cut Radion and up through the Kimmel straight. Well done through that section of the track. This is where we saw things get a bit dicey 1 lap ago. Will it happen to Fusion Espana here in the 501? Driving through the windscreen now, expertly taken, nice and tidy looking through this section of the track. No issues in Lecombe, but what about Bruxelles? Will it be a nice tidy line, or will it be a diamond line? It's going to be a little bit of a diamond, not holding the entire apex. I like it. A little runoff, and now into Speakers, not taking too much curb on the entry, if at all, and not taking too much on the exit either. Not nearly as wide. And this, the Double Ghost, the place that a couple of cars have nearly got themselves into trouble, and we're told one car did invalidate their lap. Nothing happening here. Absolutely no drama. You could drive grandma in the back seat with a lap this tidy. That's what we're witnessing here. And now through the S section, also not a lot of curb, some decent runoff as is required, hitting the outside curb into Campus, and now the run to Stavelot all the way off the track as is customary, and that looks really nice and tidy, but keeping 2 tires off at the exit, that is allowed and not an invalidation. This looks pretty good. You know what they say, sometimes when it looks slow, it's fast. and this lap does not look like it's had any drama whatsoever. That was really rapid through Blanchimont that time, and all about the chicane now. Will it be as close as we think it's going to be? This could be a pole position lap if it can get good enough. What is it? It is a 17.360. Fusion Hispana goes to the top of the board.
Fantastically tidy lap by that 501. Just every single corner they hit just looked very nice, very tidy, hitting the apex perfectly. You know, they didn't have, you know, quite the pace necessarily get down to those low 17s, high 16s like some of the pro cars do. But for a silver class car, that's going to be very, very hard to beat. You know that this guy right here in the 349 VRM racing machine is sweating, and you know that Roth sitting in the pit lane watching all this is going to be sweating, DJ, and that's something that he's going to have to deal with. Roth being the fastest one in the open session, now he's got to go out and beat a lap that was faster than himself in the open session as well. But first, the 349's got to go out.
Indeed he does, and this is why we love Super Bowl, seeing those fast times get put down, everything getting very, very hairy, Mike.
Coming up, Rouge and Ratty on here, catching all of that curb, of course, as much as you can to keep the car stable in that 349-720S, chasing down the Kemmel Straight and approaching the first part of Lake Holmes in turn 7. Braking a little early there, maybe, I think. Might be a little slow into the corner. We were switching cameras right at the exact time, but I think it was a little bit early. Of course, the McLaren definitely known for not having the best brakes of all these GT3 cars. But, you know, even so, on a Super Bowl session, you'd expect to be braking as late as possible. Nice clean run through the hairpin of Bruxelles, though, and coming out of Speaker's Corner. Chasing the run down to Pouon now, nice and tidy out of there. Of course, catching all that extra curb up on the right side before he turns in. Little bit of a wiggle as he releases his brakes, but nothing too untoward. Back on the throttle, nice and good, as he catches the outside apex, or the inside apex, and out onto the right side. Back on the left as he comes through the S's now, of course. And then again, using all of that curb on the outside. I don't know how quick this looks. I think he's braking a little bit earlier than the rest of the cars are necessarily doing, but the question is he carrying all the speed out of the corner here, Jesse Lee, as he's approaching Blanchimont? That could be the tell-all.
Yeah, it certainly looks a bit pedestrian for VRM racing, but as Top Gear used to say, sometimes when it looks benign, it's actually quite quick. We'll have to see. James de Havilland's kept it very tidy, and I think that's very much on purpose by the VRM racing driver. I think they've certainly done this to just get a decent lap on the board and know that some of the other cars have already had issues. But we'll see what the time is. Coming to the line, de Havilland will go P3, a 17.7 dead, and that's exactly what I theorized they were doing. That's an excellent lap by VRM. Didn't need to get everything, knowing that several cars have had issues, and goes ahead and sets a really decent time.
It's actually a little surprising. I thought it was going to be a little slower than that, but here it is. Here is the man that took home the silver 30-minute open qualifying pole. DJ, our last McLaren up in the silver class and our last silver class car up. He's got it all to play for here. What's he got?
Well, we're about to find out. First test of it all is going to be that braking down into La Source. Looking pretty good there. Hands very solid. That's what you like to see. Not a lot of movement. Little bit of adjustment there. You know, you talked earlier about it, playing with that brake bias, playing with this, that, or the other in the car. You can see those hands moving, making those changes now that he's out of that tight hairpin of La Source. Coming up the hill, a little bit close there on a cut. I think he'll be able to stay valid and be able to stay okay on that, but he is really pushing it, and you can tell there, jumping up to the nose of the car. This is just gives you an idea of the absolute speed they carry going down into Lacombe. Good first entry, good second entry. Not seeing a lot of bobbles out of the cars. Everything nice and smooth from the McLaren. Off the apex there a little bit through Malmedy. That could hurt him a little bit, but now he comes down into Bruxelles. Is he going to diamond? Is he going to keep it close? Well, he's going to keep it pretty close all the way around. Let the car run out wide before he hits Speaker's Corner. just a hair off of the apex. You'd like to maybe take a little bit more curbing there on the inside, so that could hurt him a little bit, but there's still plenty of time to have. Comes down into double gauche now, working it around pretty good through there. Not seeing a lot of hand movement, so that's going to help keep that time up. Nice and easy. Good. I love to see the way he's coming back to neutral there on the steering as he works his way now down into Fanyi's one. Again, a little bit off the apex. It just seems like that car lacking a little bit of turn in, but it looks very, very planted. And so that could be a little bit of a compromise setup there for them. Coming down into Compass, good line there, and then out through Stavila, slowly weaving it back again, making those brake bias adjustments, getting yourself set up for that final chicane. It'll be flat out here, coming down into Blanchimont. Takes a big chunk coming out. Looks like a good line there coming in. That looked very, very tidy for the McLaren driver in the 404. And now heavy onto the binders as he goes down into the chicane. A little bit of the later apex in the first part, but a good part coming across in the second one. Let's see what this time is gonna be. That's good enough for P2!
Not quite P1 in the silver class, but less than a 10th off. That was such a clean, good lap from Yaroslav Roth there. But unfortunately for him, that 501, Jesse, that was just such a brilliant lap by the Audi. I mean, that's going to be hard to beat, I think. But of course, our 3 pro class cars left to go here, the 889, the 992, the 70. We talked a little bit about the 70 and the 992, but what do you think of this 889?
That's going to be interesting. The 889, I think, has a little time to make up, not on the track here today, but in the championship. And as a pro car for the Legion of Racers, I think they have a little bit of work to do. They're getting embarrassed by silver class cars. There's nothing worse than having a pro placard on your car and getting beat by somebody with a silver one. We'll see if Pratama can rectify that issue right here. The Legion of Racers 889 coming across the line and through La Source for the first time, the only time, and getting a nice exit from that corner. And it looks like the car is literally going half a mile an hour, but as it gets closer to the camera, it picks up speed. An excellent looking Eau Rouge, and I didn't see the entry to Radeon, but I suspect it was very nice and tidy indeed. Up the Kimmel straight, all about positioning, change your bias if you need to, and getting down into Lacombe the proper way. Take as much curb as you dare on the outside and take as much as you can here through the S section. Now starting down the hill, a little bit of counter correction there. Wasn't quite where they wanted it, and up over the curb, a little correction still. Now through Bruxelles, how will they take it? Nice and tidy, no diamond corner here. If there was, it was ever so slight, and I gotta say, that did not look like the perfect exit of Bruxelles, but a nice run through Speakers nonetheless. I would have to imagine he lost just a little bit of time. Little fractions of tenths of a second is what you lose when you do things like that, but this is nice and tidy. The speed picking up, and that was very well held, all things considered. Now, don't take too much curb here. It will not play very well with this particular manufacturer car. Nearly runs too wide. To see, was that too wide? I don't think it was. I think it was just within tolerances through Campus and Stavilo. Stavilo's exit here, how good is that? And that was quite tidy indeed through that particular section of the track. A little bit more than I expected to see, if I'm completely honest. Through Blochemont now. What will we see from the Legion of Racers team? They will have known several cars have had slower laps. This looks like they're going for it. Looks like Pratama has been on it. Misses the entry there just a little bit. Doesn't quite get to the curb. Cuts it real tight on the exit of the chicane. What kind of lap time will we see? And it will be pole. A 17.317 for the Legion of Racers. They sold us a dummy. It looked benign. It was actually really fast.
There it is, the Asian team taking the pole away from the 501 Audi. Legions of Racers putting down the gauntlet for the last 2 pro cars to go out and beat. He says, you know what, I can be faster than all these guys. What can you do? And of course, the next one to take up the torch, Malinowski right here for the Aussie Yukon 992 in their Porsche. And here he comes into the source. Late on the brakes there, as late as possible. Still a little bit of a wiggle on the steering wheel that we've seen all session. Adjusting the TC or the brake bias there. Likely the brake bias with how many clicks he was doing as he comes up into Eau Rouge. Takes the right onto Radion. Bounces off the curb. You can see he gets his wheel straight there before he bounces off that curb. Gets him a nice run, still adjusting here on his brake bias or TC or ABS, whatever he's messing with. Of course, these GT3 machineries have all of those available to use, and you need them. If you've seen any of these cars drive around, if you don't have traction control on, well, you often just go off into the barrier. Of course, a lot of cars, racing cars don't necessarily have traction control, but these GT3 machinery are made to use them, and the very loose setups that they run, you will need them as well. Out into the left-hander here as Speakers. He's looking very tidy as he came out of Bruxelles and into Speakers' corner, and now we'll see how he can handle the double ghost. This has been kind of a bit of a bane of the Porsches today. Big wiggle on the way in, but hardly even slows down, doesn't even downshift or anything, stays in fourth gear. Fifth before he leaves the corner. Look for the curb on the left there. Get up on top of it right as you smash the brakes. Carry that apex all the way around the right-hander and the left-hander here. Very, very clean here. Again, lots of wiggle from this Porsche, but it's not necessarily out of the question for Malinowski to still be very quick, even with all that. Running up on the curb so he can get a great run into the corner. Not even a lift there through the middle as he comes out of turn 16 and down onto the back straight. Now he's just got Blanchimont to do. You can see him adjusting a couple more things, likely bringing his brake bias down a couple clicks. Over to the right, catches the curb there on the in and out of Blanchimont, and then runs himself right to the left side of the track. Very, very late on the brakes as this Porsche barely gets it down, just hits that perfectly as he downshifts to first. Look at just the clean run out of the corner as well. He's gonna come across the line. What will it be? And it is! There's the 16 we were looking for. The 16.960 from Malinowski. He may be ill. He may not have slapped it down in the open session, but he came to play in Super Bowl, and now DJ Caracas has to answer.
Yes, indeed he does. It is all down to that number 70 McLaren here to see what he can do. Bringing the car out of the chicane, the start of flying lap. This has got to be absolutely pixel perfect every way around for Caracas. Dives the car down into the source. First gear corner. Little bit off the apex there, it has to be said, but that doesn't necessarily matter. He's able to carry plenty of speed through there, and that's what's going to count. All right, now he's going to breathe a little bit. Let's see how he's able to go up Eau Rouge and Radion, getting that car all the way over to the right and bringing it back up over the hill. A little bit of an adjustment there being made. Almost it looked like mid-corner. That was a bit gutsy. Now he's got time to breathe on the Kemmel straight. He's already thinking about what he's going to have to do going down into Lacombe. Let's see what those moves are going to look like. Comes down into the corner. Perfect kiss of the apex on the first part of the chicane. And again, onto the second. Little bit of correction there coming off the corner. That could have cost him maybe 102 of a second, but good job there out of Malmedy. Now down into Brussels. He's going to continue to take that tight line. No, he's not. A big diamond there coming off mid-corner, and a snap of oversteer he's going to have to correct. Thus far, it looks like a lot of little bits and bobbles here that I'm not a big fan of. Big moment there coming out of Speaker's corner. He's lucky to be able to hold on to that car as he now goes down into a good double gauche. Let's see if that McLaren's going to be a little bit more compliant. Doesn't run that car nearly as wide. That's going to compromise a couple of miles an hour of scrub on the tires. Now he comes down into Fanny's. Looked a little bit hesitant there on the brakes, a little bit off, but he's able to get the second part right. Again, a little bit of overcorrection there. The rear end of that car, of that McLaren, just not looking like it wants to be really good on power down. Again, coming through Compass, he's got a little bit of it, but a nice smooth line coming out of Stavolo. Now he lines it up. Let's see if he makes any adjustments going down into the heavy braking zone of the chicane. It doesn't look like he's doing anything there, so he likes the way the car is as is. Flies it down through Blanchimont. Here he comes. One more braking zone to go for Caracas. Can he be able to take away that pole from Malinowski? Here he comes. 1 and 2. Little bit of correction there mid-corner, brings it back on to the loud pedal. What's this time gonna be? It is... Oh!
Wow. 17 hundredths of a second. You know, DJ, you know where he lost that? Double gauche. There it is, right there.
Yeah, exactly. What he did is he just didn't trust the car. He didn't let it float out a little bit wide enough, and that was just enough to cost him that 17 thousandths of a second.
Malinowski, despite the illness, despite showing up late to group qualifying, despite not being the fastest car in the group stage, despite not running a 16 at all, comes into Super Bowl and runs a 17 one thousandths quicker than Grantis Caracas could do. If they do that during the 24, boys, we got ourselves a good race, don't we?
Yeah, this is going to be just a fantastic watch, I think, between all three of these pro class cars, the 992, the 70, and the 889, all of them looking very quick. You know, as long as they can get a race set up. Of course, next weekend for the 24-hour, we are forecasting at least some rain. So this Porsche has been traditionally very good in the rain so far this season. They dominated, absolutely dominated at Nürburgring. And you know what? I actually see Tortellini bashing down the door as he jumped out of the car as soon as he got back to the pits and ran down here. Tortellini, dude, you're ill, and you come and drop this lap.
I don't know.
But you still came and dropped that lap.
Yes. Well, in the middle sector wasn't the best. It was just clean, you know? And as I was watching other people, it seemed like everyone was kind of scared of their car. You could see a lot of like misjudgments and people trying to really tiptoe around the track with little confidence, especially from those McLarens. I don't know why they are not ahead, because they should be. And yeah, I'm so happy because like I thought I'm not even gonna do the thing. I was lying in the bed the whole day and I was like just, oh, okay, ping, there it is up. I'm just gonna go and see what happens, because obviously starting from the back would be just dangerous. It's better to put the lap in, even to be in the midfield. But well, I was definitely not expecting that.
You know, so we were talking just before the broadcast about how you know, you guys weren't there. We were theorizing as why. Obviously, we found out why. But let's talk briefly about your guys' potential strategy for next week as well, especially with you being ill.
No strategy.
Jesse Lee had a little Jesse Lee had a little insider information that it might just be you and George.
That was the initial plan. I will see how I'll be feeling during the week, because obviously Spa 24 for us, only two being in the car, would be extremely physically demanding. So if I'm not up to the task, we'll try to maybe get someone in the car just to make it easier. I mean, if I would be, 100% feeling good, I think it's still a good challenge for us to make. I think that, you always go either 3, 4, 5 drivers for 24-hour, and we just want to test ourselves. The championship already going for us really, really good. It just got even better right now. So why not? It's a little bit for fun as a challenge. Just let's see how I'm gonna be feeling.
Torts, I've got a question for you. First of all, I hope you feel better. Number two, what a crazy qualifying you had. But every week we notice your driving inputs are so different than everybody else. Racing theory dictates that you want smooth, consistent inputs. That's just not what we're seeing from your inputs. Can you tell us a little bit about how you drive?
You see that's because everyone wants, when someone's coaching other drive, and when you're learning to drive, and when you're seeing all those theories, the rule of thumb, let's call that, is to have smooth inputs, because what you want is the tire of the car and overall load transfer and how the car moves around on its platform. That needs to be smooth to ensure the tire works as an entire car, even aero-wise, is working efficiently. But the funny thing is, especially if you have extremely playable tire. You don't obviously achieving it with extremely smooth inputs is straightforward, but that doesn't mean that you cannot achieve it with other inputs. So you can achieve a really smooth moving car platform with way more aggressive raw inputs like I'm doing. And that's just the way for me to drive the car. I started the racing with T300, which force feedback wise wasn't the most detailed. But I don't know, I kind of wanted to drive from force feedback. I thought that was the way to go for me. So while doing little movements of the steering wheel, also, I think that's my theory that you can way easier feel the change of resistance in the wheel while you're moving
Interesting.
it rather than getting like an input from the wheel while trying to hold onto it, right? Uh, so there are a lot of like little movements and corrections. I think John Watson on one of the GTWC broadcasts just called it actually feedback, that it's an actual technique. So I'm doing that feedback, trying to get info from the tire by just moving the wheel a little bit. And also, like I explained, you can also throw the car around a little bit more, but those inputs, let's say, will average out to the car movement being a certain car movement, and that needs to be moved to achieve the just grip out of the car, maximize its performance.
Well, certainly, I'm going to go ahead and let Torts have that simply because he talks circles around me. And hey, he's on pole for the 24. DJ, you got anything for our pole sitting team?
I guess my biggest question. So you say you don't really have any strategy for the race at this point set out. I mean, are you going to be sitting there planning it out, or are you just going to hope to be
Well,
running away?
definitely during the week, if we're doing that together, we'll try to at least have a plan of how we would schedule our stints and our sleeping. So we will get some basic plan, like, okay, we'll start maybe with one driver or another, and I don't know, someone at some point will have to do like a triple or even a quadruple stint while the other is sleeping, right? And we're gonna try to figure out at which point it would be the most optimum. With our time zones are only 1 hour apart, but that also gives you a 1 hour to play with, like compared to what you're normally used to going to sleep at. Uh, so I don't have that ready yet, but we'll definitely need a plan this time. Usually for endurance racing, we're going in with absolutely no fucking idea what's even gonna happen. Sorry for the further.
Well, well,
uh,
Torts, we appreciate you coming in when you're very ill, and also the amazing job that you and your team have done all season. We look forward to seeing what the strategy is. It'll be a mystery to us as well now, and we can't wait for that. But for right now, congratulations on another incredible pole position.
Thank you very much, guys. I just feel a lot better just by being here and doing that. So already,
Racing helps the soul, right?
yeah,
It
it,
really
it,
does
it
sometimes.
definitely does. Definitely does.
Well, thank you, Torts. And well, once again, pole position, Yaz Heat 992.
Let's go.
Well, one other point to make before we actually officially exit the qualifying session. All drivers, all cars are required to finish their cooldown lap. R70, who of course Caracas took P2 17 hundredths behind the pole sitting 992 car, did not finish their cooldown lap. They ran out of fuel, and that means that the stewarding decision should be coming down, that they will get a -4 grid penalty for next week's race. They will not start on the front row, but instead start on the outside of row number 3. P6 should be their starting position. So, guys, 1 liter of fuel really makes a lot of a difference. I mean, all you have to make it back to the pits. You have to do that cool down lap. That is a rule set in stone. It is reminded to the drivers before the Super Bowl session and throughout, and they know this for the last races as well. Unfortunate for them, but in the end, I mean, P6 isn't too far back, but definitely not where you wanted to be when you were looking at clean air on the front row.
Look, Volante was going for it. They were 17/100ths off of the pole position. Their fuel calculation had to be perfect. Unfortunately, it was a little less than half of a lap shy. They will take that grid penalty, but hey, at least you take solace in the fact that you know you have a car that can compete for the win. 4 positions, not the end of the world. 2 rows, you can win from there. Not a big deal. Still a great day, a great qualifying effort from Volante.
Well, 24 hours of Spa, 1 week away, guys. We hope you will be joining us for a large chunk of the race. Myself and Ryan Gill kicking off the stream here at 1600 UK time, 0800 Pacific Daylight Time. If you're out in the US like I am, we'll be up and live. Green flag about 8 minutes, 9 minutes after the hour, give or take, and then 24 hours of action. And of course, Jesse Lee, as well as just the roster of commentators that we have here at RCI with Les Stephenson, Ed Edwards, Ryan Mawson, all these guys going to be coming and joining during the broadcast. And of course, a couple special guests with us. Not only will DJ Clark be joining Jesse and I for the overnight UK stint, we also have Mr. Paul Jeffrey coming in for the Saturday evening stint just before DJ jumps on. It will be an absolute pleasure to have Paul back with us here on RCI TV. It's definitely been a few months, and DJ, welcome to your first broadcast, bud. Obviously, you'll be here with us next week, but we hope it won't be the last as well.
I cannot wait. I am excited, and I am happy to be a part of the team here, Mike. It's going to be a great time to go racing.
And one other thing from you, DJ, I know obviously you do a lot of other stuff as well. Any shout outs that you'd like to throw out to the crowd where they can find you at more often other than here at RCI, and of course on SRO America and Asia where you participate with us?
I do indeed. Check for me out on SRO America and Asia, as well as on Sirius XM, where I am the PA and radio announcer for SRO Live. Also, be sure to check out GSRC, as we have a great spat of stuff pretty much every day of the week. That is always good to check out. Just YouTube/GSRC.
Well, guys, go check out DJ, one of our favorite commentators, of course. He'll also be joining us, I believe, for the Ferrari Esports Series alongside Jesse Lee later on in the year that myself and Ryan Gill, of course, administrate with our job at AK Esports. Jesse Lee, it's been a qualifying session. We got 24 hours next week, the 9921 poll again. You think they're going to take it next week?
Well, they could very well, but I heard a little hesitancy in Malinowski's voice, having to recalculate the strategy due to an unforeseen circumstance. It might not just be the two of them. That might be good or bad, depending on where you sit on it. And oh, by the way, this is the closest qualifying for pole position we've had thus far. 17 1000s, the only thing that was in it. Yes, a 70 is going to be a few grid spots behind them. I don't think that's going to matter in the grand scheme of things. We got a race on our hands next weekend.
Next weekend it will be. We'll see everybody then, and of course throughout the week for our normal championships. I believe the British Masters starts on Monday. If not, it will be the next week. The Wednesday Rookie Series, if you're interested in doing some racing yourself, that one will not be broadcasted, but and rookie drivers jump in. You can still do pre-qualifying for our new Wednesday series. And of course we have Thursday and Friday races as well. Hope you'll join us on RCI TV for that. We'll hope you join us for Night Owl in just a few hours with Jesse Lee as well. And we'll, if anything, we'll see everybody back for the 24-hour next week. Have a great weekend.